The moving trucks are here. Camp has ended for another season at St. John Fisher. The Bills today, even before practice began, already beginning the process of packing up, heading back to Orchard Park for the remainder of the 2025 season. Welcome to Bills Camp Day Recap. I'm Thad Brown with Rachel Liebert, Caleb Carr. As we said, the final practice here at Fisher is in the books. And as we've said on this show, we are football first. We will do that again today, mainly because the football part of this show will be about 6 seconds. There was not much that happened at practice today. There were a few full-speed drills, but no pads today. For the first time since the first 4 days of camp, the Bills went back to helmets only today. A lot of walk-through stuff, and then on top of that, practice ended about a half hour earlier than normal. So this was a getaway day in every single sense of the word. And guys, real quick, let's just talk about our impressions of practice today. Rachel, start with you. Just give me the overriding impression, and you actually had a very good way to describe what today's practice was.
Yeah, it was the last day of school. It's like you're there with your friends, you're just there to have fun. Some people don't show up, James Cook, and you're just there to have a good time, and that's what it felt like today. They were just out there, obviously getting things done, but kind of goofing off a little bit, like having a good time. It's the last day of school, and we're just, ready to get things moving on.
I had that vibe right off the bat. Spencer Brown walks out to practice. He grabbed one camera, put it right to his face mask, said something to the photographer, and then signed autographs and came over to my camera, put a hand on my lens. The whole vibe today was, we are happy to be out of here. Sure, we're going to get some work done, but it ain't going to be that much work today. There was a little bit, Caleb, to talk about in terms of the practice today, though.
Yeah, I mean, they got some work done. They still did their individual drills. There were still some nice plays by a couple guys on the team, but overall, it was just a very kind of laid back, kind of basic, they weren't walking through plays, but they definitely weren't going full speed. Obviously, they didn't have pads on, but it was even less than what we saw at the beginning of camp when they didn't have pads. So it's still some good plays being made out there, still some guys, showing what they can do, but overall, it was just a pretty chill day.
The one highlight was a deep ball that Josh Allen threw to Laviska Shenault. He looked open initially against Christian Benford with the ball hung up so high, and really I don't think there was enough space for him to hit a 50-yard pass that not only did Benford have coverage, but Trey White came over to help, and then Benford knocked the ball away, not from Shenault, but from Trey White. Trey White actually was down on the ground for a little bit. There was a moment where I thought, oh man, we've got a nice easy day of coverage. Now it's going to turn into Trey White injury coverage, but he got up, and after being on the ground for a couple minutes, got up, looked okay, and then started dancing. And we're going to talk a little more about Trey White's camp and how much fun that's been. But it was actually kind of the perfect summation of this camp, to where the star of the last day, the only guy who really did anything notable, Christian Benford and Trey White together. So now that we've moved on from the football part of this, let's talk about the big story, which remains James Cook today. And Sean McDermott talked to the media for the first time since Cook began his hold in. Now, when McDermott spoke today, he began by saying, I expect James Cook to be at practice. But the more Sean McDermott talked, the more we kind of inferred that phrase, I expect him to be there, was a little more coach speak. But he did have a whole lot today to say today about Cook and what's been going on with his contract and not being at practice.
We've had good communication, which I appreciate. The line between a coach and a player, to me, is a little bit different than what goes on, on the other end of things, right? Just with business, right? So to me, it's important that we stay seeing eye to eye in terms of, hey, our relationship and our communication and our ability to communicate. And James has done a good job with that.
I'm a big advocate of everybody getting theirs and getting paid, and sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and James is who he is, and he's one of the best running backs in the league, and you'd be crazy not to say we don't want him out there. We desperately want him out there with us. There is this huge business piece to this game. It's the hardest part. It's generational stuff. It's wealth for you and your family. It's not a small chunk of change, and making sure that he's healthy, and I'm still going through the mental reps, and he's still doing that. He's a pro, and he knows what he's doing.
The team moves forward. That's the nature of the business. It's you get these reminders from time to time that it is a business, and the position that he's in right now is not an easy one. That said, we have to move forward as a team, and I'm sure he respects that.
So James Cook is still holding in, wasn't at practice at all today, again, for a second straight day, no strange trips to the porta potty. Rachel, where are we right now with James Cook and this hold-in now as we move away from the Fisher part of the season into practices again in Orchard Park?
Yeah, I think today we had a small glimmer of hope when we heard Sean McDermott say, he's expected to be out there. I mean, all of the reporters were crowded around the area that he could come out, and obviously he didn't show up, but You know, it's the same question we keep coming back to is where do we go from here? And I think nobody knows. It doesn't seem Sean McDermott knows. Brandon Beane doesn't seem to know. And that's concerning of, you know, what is the next step for James Cook? When will James Cook, if he does put back on the practice jersey or be on the field? And that's a huge part of this offense, as we've, you know, seen throughout camp. And not that the run game has really been that different, I guess, before James Cook was here, and then after kind of like they still weren't doing anything remarkable. But at the same time, that's a huge piece of what this offense is. And you have to think, you know, I know Joe Brady yesterday said, we're not prepping around James Cook. You know, we're moving on and we're doing, you know, what with the people that we have, what we can do with them. But also you have to think, you know, they have to prep without James Cook because James Cook was such a big part of this offense last year.
You can't just walk into the season with no idea how to handle it. Now, I mean, look, I think the idea will be we're still going to have Ty Johnson on third down and 2-minute drill like we did. We're going to give Ray Davis a bunch of first, second down carries and move on. And, you know, Frank Gore might come up from the practice squad a couple times if it does come to that. But I think you're right. I think the idea of, you know, treating it like an injury or something that's not important. Yeah. We're still about a month away from the season, so we're not anywhere close to panic button time, but that time is getting close. Caleb?
Yeah, we're getting really close. Like you said, still a month out. I mean, if we don't have anything by the first preseason game, the second preseason game, even the third, it's still, but when you get into like that week or 2 weeks before that game one, and there's nothing at that point, maybe, that's, I think, when we're going to really start panicking. The other part that for me is a little concerning is, you know, at the very beginning of this, Cook made it clear that he wasn't in good terms with, you know, where his contract was with the team, but that he's out here for his teammates. And on a day like today, where everyone seems to be having fun and in a good mood, and you kind of knew that's what today was going to be going into it, I almost thought that maybe he would at least come out for a minute just to show his teammates that support on a day like today. And so the fact that he didn't, although it's still not too telling, the fact that he didn't even make an appearance today concerns me a little bit about his relationship with his teammates now. Everything that we've heard from his teammates, though, so far these 4 days have been positive, and they all support him. But that is just another thing that makes me question how everything's going a
to
little
continue bit. Rachel's last day of school analogy, it's almost like he's so mad at the principal he blew off movie day, which is like, why? It's
Who does
movie
that?
day.
Who does that? Why blow off movie day?
Exactly. So that is a really good point that, you know, today was not a hard work day, and he was still not out here. Now, some of that is because all of us, like you said, were posted up at every possible entrance to the field with a camera, but still, it's a very reasonable point that it has gotten to this, the situation's gotten to the level where even a day like today is a day that James Cook wants to be nowhere near the practice field for. Now, to be clear, you know, Sean McDermott did say that James Cook is going to meetings, that he's, you know, been on campus. So it's not like he's not hanging out with the guys ever. He's just not doing it on the practice field. All right, let's move on now to the preseason, which comes up in a couple days. Josh Allen will not play in game number 1. Not a stunner, you know, and I've always kind of been of the opinion that we don't need to see 17 in most of these practice games. We will see Mitch Trubisky, and not only will we see him, he will be the starter. And we've talked a number of times on this show about which quarterback is more likely to be the backup. And Caleb, at least for game number 1 of the exhibition season, number 11 still has the lead over Mike White.
Yeah, you know, I said a few days ago that I thought that Mike White had the better camp overall, but I think Trubisky came in with such a solid grasp on that QB2 that it was going to take a lot for him to. So I'm not too surprised. You know, anything can still happen. We'll have to see how these games go. I'm sure, you know, he hasn't. McDermott hasn't said anything specifically, but I'm sure that Mike White will get a start at some point in this preseason. So we'll see how everyone does. But I don't think it's all that surprising that Trubisky will be out there with the starters.
Yeah, I don't think it's surprising either. I mean, we talked about this yesterday of even though Mike White we might think has the more consistent days of camp, I think the Bills have seen Trubisky as the second guy up, you know, this or the first guy up, I guess, after Josh Allen this whole time. And, you know, you have to look at their resumes, and obviously Trubisky has been in those bigger moments and is more prepared to be in that position. So it's not a surprise. I mean, and I think it's a good thing, too, for Bills fans to kind of see, maybe get some more faith in Trubisky if, you know, the situation does occur where Josh Allen does have to come out for a snap or whatever the case may be. I think it is good, and hopefully he performs well to give people more of a, okay, I trust Mitch Trubisky back, you know, behind center.
Caleb, you talked about Mike White getting a chance at some point. I think that makes sense. But when you look at how the preseason games are likely laid out, so this one's going to be Mitch Trubisky. He's going to play with the starters, though. The other starters are all going to play, Sean McDermott said, for about a quarter. Next week, probably the game where Josh Allen would play, right? So that's not an opportunity for Mike White to play with the starters. And then game 3, none of the starters usually play. So if there was going to be an opportunity for Mike White to go out with the first team, it'd be this week. Exactly. So to be honest, although we're still, like I said, a month away from the season, we may have our answer on who the backup quarterback is simply because of what the depth chart will be for this Sunday or this Saturday.
Yes.
All right, let's move on a little bit here. One of the big themes of this camp were injuries. You know, that this Bills team just over and over and over could not shake the injury bug. A couple positions hit harder than most. Linebacker for sure. The kicker hasn't been even in the game. You know, Caleb, where are we with the Bills injury-wise and how they managed the camp that Sean McDermott said they couldn't even get everything they wanted to done because they didn't have the bodies on the field to run all the drills?
I think they've been managing it decently well. You know, they're not forcing people out there when they don't need to be out there, when they're hurt. Currently, it seems like everybody that hasn't been practicing these past few days, according to Sean McDermott, should be either back for a preseason game or back for week one. You know, one of the big names, Shakir, he said that he is hopefully back. He sounded pretty hopeful that he'd be back for week one. Obviously, we don't have any update on Hairston at this point, but I think it's tough. You never know what's going to happen. McDermott also said that this was one of the longest injury lists that they've had in their whole time here at Fisher. So it's really tough, but I think that they're handling it well, and I think it gives us a chance to see that some of these positions that we were not too confident about before the season, a little bit more confidence about the depth that we have there. So I think that there's some good things that came out of it, and I think the team handled it pretty well.
We're going to talk about the depth at a couple spots here in a minute. Shakir, I think, is the big concern after, Max Harrison, I think we've kind of discussed and digested at this point. But Shakir, Sean McDermott said that he thought like what he was being told was that week one would be okay. And again, my thing with Shakir has been, I think he'll be healthy enough for week one, but is he healthy enough for the Bills to risk him week one? Either way, Rachel, the bottom line is these injuries were frustrating, annoying, but season altering doesn't seem that way.
No, I don't think with Shakir especially, I don't think even if he isn't back week one, I don't think it is a season-altering injury, as you said. And to Caleb's point, we have gotten the chance to see those guys that, could be the next man up. And that's what training camp is about, is being able, whether or not it's injury-related or, they just want to get those reps with those guys at the bottom of the depth chart. We've seen that, and it kind of makes us feel a little bit better as to, who could be out there if, guys are moving around, if Shakir's not out there, if, Josh Palmer can't stay healthy or whoever, it may be in that situation. So Josh Allen actually said in after practice, he feels like they've accomplished what they wanted to do despite all of these injuries happening. So I feel like that's a good sign, coming from a quarterback and just knowing that despite all of these injuries and every single day, seeing just a name and another name on these injury lists, it still feels like they feel like they're at a good spot with the guys that have performed in camp.
I agree that it's good when the quarterback says that, but that's one of the answers where I say, what else would he say?
Yeah.
We didn't get enough done at camp. You're not going to hear that from Josh Allen. He's just a consummate team guy. You talked about things we feel better about. Let's dive into that. Camp is now done. We've had the first chunk, the first, milepost of the season we've reached. What do we feel better about after camp? We'll go down the table for this, and Caleb, I'll let you go first. What is the thing you feel, I don't want to say most better about? A, it's not proper English, but B, this is not about the best improved player of the team. Give me something that you like a little bit better than you did 3 weeks ago.
The depth of the cornerback room. Even with a guy like Maxwell Harrison going down, I think, especially from the two rookies that we have, the other two rookies outside of Maxwell Harrison, Dorian Strong and Jordan Hancock. There we go. Dorian Strong and Jordan Hancock. Thank you, Rachel.
I can't tell you, by the way, how many years we do a show like this, and we are out here watching all nine of these guys talking about them every day, and then when it's time to remember a name, randomly,
just one,
everyone, Josh, stuff like that. Every year that happens. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, so I think, especially from the two of them, I think those are my main point in the depth is, it's a 5th and a 6th round rookie. And in a draft where you get a cornerback in the 1st round, you don't have these huge expectations from them. But I think that they showed that they are capable of going out there, even if it's just for a few plays, and holding their own for a while. They held their own. We've talked about injuries, especially in the cornerback room. They held their own all camp, it seemed like to me. Yes, there were some ups, there were some downs, there were some not great plays, but they're learning, they're getting better, they're getting those opportunities. So although if, heaven forbid, the top 3 cornerbacks go down, at that point I would be concerned. But if Benford needs to take a rest for something and Strong needs to come in for some reason, I wouldn't be panicking at that point.
I think you're right. I think the floor at corner
Yes.
is a little bit raised than what it was before, and not a shock. I mean, this is a program that's been developing defensive backs out of whatever for a long period of time. They're continuing to do that this year as well. Rachel, what do you feel a little bit better about?
Yeah, also going back to depth in the receiver room. I mean, we kind of just talked about this 5 minutes ago with the Shakir injury, but same thing, just those next guys up have had their chances out here. And, we were kind of concerned seeing so many injuries with Shakir, with Palmer, with, Keon was the only one that was really healthy. And with him, we hadn't, he's had an okay camp. But seeing guys like Wilkerson and Gosnell, and not saying those guys are, guaranteed to make the 53-man roster. Most likely they're not going to, and they'll be practice squad. But just knowing that they are on the practice squad and that if they need to be called up to, come in and be that guy up, then they're capable of doing that. Especially Wilkerson. I think he's had a great last few days. Gosnell had a good few days. I mean, he's been doing really well. He's definitely stood out at camp. But I think Wilkerson for sure has stood out to me the back end of camp. So I feel a lot better about, the who's in the receiver.
The best way I can think of to underline that point is we talked yesterday about the first team offense is starting to score touchdowns. It wasn't because there were good receivers in the game. It was when Spencer Brown came back into the game. And it really tells you how this offense is powered. When the offensive line is good, it almost don't matter who's catching the passes. And we saw that in camp here. For me, the thing I feel better about the most is Trey White, who has looked as good as I think you can possibly expect him to look. Again, the guy who was an all-pro when he was 25, pre-2 major leg injuries, probably isn't coming back. But he has been one notch down from that at most. I mean, over and over and over, and the more plays he makes, the more excited he gets. Like we talked about today, he gets run over by his own teammate. It looks like he's going to be out, and gets up and starts dancing on the field. He has felt good, he has looked happy, he's looked comfortable, and he's played that way. And you talk about the Max Hairston injury and what the floor is for the corner room. Not only are the guys deep down the depth chart looking better, but the guy who's probably going to start right now looks really, really good. And this Bills team with two corners who are playing at a plus level, which is what we saw all through camp, is going to make this defense really, really nasty. All right, real quick, how about things we feel a little worse about? Rachel, I'll let you go first on that one.
I believe I was talking about the run game.
Yes, and you were right about that, yeah.
The run game, I mean, even before James Cook stopped practicing, we didn't see anything phenomenal from them. I think that does too. Spencer Brown wasn't there. That is a big part of what happens on the offense as a whole. But just, I think maybe it's more of a testament to the defense having maybe a overall better camp than the offense. But also the run game, I mean, without Cook we want to see Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. We don't really know how they're going to fit in and what their new roles are going to look like. But even before, like I said, with James Cook, I wasn't too impressed with what was being produced. But that also was before pads, and that was before, they were going full go. So, I mean, it's hard to tell with the whole James Cook situation, but, still run game is a little bit concerning.
To your point, it's also hard to tell when it's not full tackle.
Yeah.
As full as they go out here, when it's not take your guy to the ground, It's not the same thing. But I agree, the run game overall, all three teams, too, first, second, third team, has not been what I expected. Caleb, yours?
Yeah, I'm going to go to the special teams. A little more concerned about Tyler Bass now. We only saw him a little bit out there. There's the one day I think he went like 4 for 8.
That's
was that
correct.
What
That's
it
the
was?
number,
And, there was some rain, and there's still a little bit of kind of learning with the new punter / holder. But then he was injured, and we haven't seen him again. So the only real play that we've seen from him is a 50% day in the rain. And, there were already question marks around him and his kicking and his ability going into the preseason. So I now don't feel any better at all. I'm a little bit concerned at this point about what he can produce for the Bills.
The problem with that is, and we talked about it last year when a lot of us were thinking that maybe the Bills should move on. There just isn't a better option.
Exactly.
This is the guy they've got, and as long as he's healthy, they're going to roll with him, and that is going to mean some ups and downs. My thing I feel worse about, I'm going to go quickly through this, is just linebacker depth. And it's almost the same reason as yours. It's not because anybody was bad. In fact, Shaq Thompson, I think, was surprisingly good. Yeah. But it got so bad they had to release Balin Spector. This is a guy they like. Now he's not on the roster because they're just out of bodies. So the injury situation there is the primary driver with those guys. We talked a little bit kind of joking about what do you feel neutral about. And there is actually something that we kind of do. One of the big stories going into this camp, would Keon Coleman, would Dalton Kincaid take a leap? And look, I don't think either guy has been terrible. But Caleb, I don't think I see a leap coming, at least through what we saw from each guy through 2 weeks.
No, if you go ahead and you scroll on social media, X, Instagram, TikTok even, you're going to see a lot of stuff about buy Keon Coleman, buy Keon Coleman in fantasy drafts. I'm not telling you to not do that, but I'm maybe pump on the brakes a little bit. Yeah. I think a breakout year is still possible. It's only training camp.
For sure.
a breakout year is still possible, but from what we've seen so far, it's not as likely as I would have thought. And to your point, nothing terrible. You know, you got some bad drops there that we don't love at all, but you also got some really good plays that we saw. And I think that kind of balances it out where I'm not at all more confident in him. I'm not less confident, but the fact that I'm not more confident and I'm neutral to me is a negative.
Rachel?
Yeah, the same thing goes for Dalton Kincaid. I feel like he's had kind of a quiet camp. I mean, he's been okay. He's made the grabs that we would expect him to make, but also at the same time, he hasn't had anything too crazy where you're like, okay, Dalton Kincaid might have a really good year this year. But it's not something that, you know, I feel bad about. Same thing with Keon Coleman. You know, they're still capable. We know what type of players they are and what they can be. But same thing. It's just, I didn't really have a change of heart of how I feel about either of those two. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's just kind of where we're at.
You're right, though, that Kincaid's camp was quieter. You know, where Coleman made plays and made bad plays, there was noise there. Kincaid, you know, there were some days you barely realized he was on the field. I went into this camp thinking this camp was not going to change my opinion of either guy. The funny thing is that the way they both went through camp, it also did nothing. You know, like as much as I expected not to have an opinion, the camp for both guys was that neutral. All right, as we move on from camp, let's talk about our favorite things from camp so far. What we enjoyed the most. Doesn't have to be football related, but just through 2.5 weeks of the Bills, what do we like the most? Caleb, you can go first.
Trey White in general, just his return to Buffalo, you can see every time that he runs out onto the field, especially early in the camp, the love that Bills Mafia has for him. He gets this huge cheer, and then just the energy that he brings in addition to it. You know, there's so many moments, the moment with Deion Dawkins' kids, when he was, talking to them.
First day of camp.
First day of camp, Uncle Trey. There was a moment in the back of the end zone where he was playfully arguing with a ref, and Keon Coleman picked up a flag and threw it at him. And then just the interactions of him with some of these younger cornerbacks, or we heard from Benford, the kind of difference in the two of them, the yin and yang of them and how they pair together. Just having Trey White in a Buffalo Bills helmet, to me, is one of my favorite parts of camp.
Rachel?
I'm going to go with something that happened yesterday. KJ Hamler obviously made his Hard Knocks debut, and he was having an okay camp, as expected as someone further down in the receiver room, but he made his debut, and he kind of had his moment with his kid scooter. And so yesterday, I caught up with him after practice, and it was honestly like one of my favorite quotes that I've heard all of practice. He said, "I don't need a Ferrari, I just need a Honda Civic," and that's so good, and it was just my favorite moment. He was just so fun to talk to, and just like what his thought process was with this whole scooter moment that everybody's been talking about. And I'm excited to see if the scooter is back in episode 2. We'll find out.
I can't tell you how many people have had the same reaction talking to KJ Hamler. He is just one of the best guys, one of the most unique guys you will meet. My favorite thing at camp was Terry Pagula getting an autograph from Josh Allen. The story is on your screen right now.
Brandon being Brandon, because Brandon is a personality at camp, walked up to him and said, "Are you really the owner of the Bills?" And he said, "Yes, I am." Then he said, "Can you get Josh Allen's signature?"
Because I was calling his name and he wouldn't answer me. So I told the boss, if he doesn't get Josh Allen autograph, Josh Allen will be kicked off the team.
And he said, "Well, if you're really the owner of the Bills, you're the boss. You could go get it." Terry Pagula grabbed the bag and he's running on the field.
I wouldn't think he was gonna run, like sprint onto the field and get Josh Allen's autograph.
Poor Josh is in the middle of throwing and his boss walks up like, "You're gonna have to sign this right now." Everybody was caught off guard, including the governor. We're all sitting here like, is he really going? And he ran back over and Brandon says, "Oh, you really are the owner of the Bills." He's trying to negotiate having Josh come over.
Hey, can you tell him to take a picture with me?
Pagula said, "When you're 18, come see me. You might be a GM one day."
I felt like a professional meetup. Got to meet the governor, and when I got meeting the governor, I was just meeting professional people.
For him to let his guard down and just connect with Brandon like that, it was so genuine. Nothing was planned, it was genuine. It was a great sports moment.
Super fun to see Terry Pagula interacting in that way, totally out of nowhere. Now, it wasn't the wildest and the most viral moment of camp. There were other things, Josh Allen involved in about 7 of them, but it was really cool to see the owner kind of let his hair down a little bit and have some fun with a young kid. All right, for the last time in camp, it is time to hand out our turkey burgers. There were not a lot from the last day of camp, but we do each kind of have scribbled around to find one. Caleb, you can go first with yours.
Yeah, like you said, not a ton going on, but I'm going to go with Joshua Palmer. I know I wasn't here yesterday, but you guys said he had a pretty consistent day today. I thought he brought that today as well, just all around consistent. And then there was one play in particular towards the back end of practice, just like a 15-yard catch over the middle from Allen. He faked a lateral to Moore, who was running in the opposite direction, and then just ran by 3 defenders who all thought that he was going to go. And, it was one of those where they were probably just messing around, and it really wasn't full speed. But I thought it was just a fun little play, and maybe something we see in a game at some point.
It was a cool moment. I will add this, though. He ran in the end zone right past me, and I think he was greeted by Ray Davis, and he looks at Ray and said, did they fall for it? So they were actually trying to,
That's great. That's
to
awesome.
trick the defense on it, and it worked like a charm. Rachel, your turkey burger today.
We're going to give one to Jamarcus Ingram. I gave one earlier in camp to him because I believe he had an interception, but we're coming back to him today. He just had a really good pass breakup. I believe up the middle, maybe.
Yeah, yes, it was an in-breaking route for
yeah,
sure.
Yeah, not sure who threw it, but regardless, it was a very good play from him, so he gets my turkey burger today.
My turkey burger is Christian Benford on the play that he knocked away from his teammate and his receiver. Look, Benford's had a ridiculous camp, and this, as much as we talk about Trey White celebrating as the perfect way to end camp, Christian Benford making the highlight of camp, I think is the best way to do that as well. Here in my left hand, this is the list of turkey burgers for all of camp. So, your turkey burger winner for this camp, we actually have a 1, 2, 3, 4-way tie with 3 turkey burgers total. Matt Milano.
I think all from you.
I think they all
me
came
and
from
3
you.
consecutive days. Yeah, he had that one week where he was fantastic. Trey White had 3, and I'm really stunned he didn't get more. Like, it's kind of an upset that he didn't win this on his own. Christian Wilkerson, which underlines how much he came on late. And then Christian Benford, again, his 3, he was the only guy that I think had 1 each week, which I think talks about his consistency in this camp. So those are your turkey burger winners for this year. Dorian Strong, Terrell Shavers, Mike White, and Mr. Ingram, Jamarcus, each had 2. So that's going to do it for our coverage out here, but this show will not end. If training camp goes on, we'll be going on with this show as well. We'll have recaps of all 3 preseason games, not always that night because a couple of them are pretty late. We'll also be doing a couple shows a week leading up to the 2nd and 3rd preseason games of the year. We leave you tonight with Josh Allen. High fives all around for everybody, some autographs, of course, for the last day of camp. It's one of the most popular things every year here at Fisher, and this season did not disappoint. For Caleb Carr and Rachel Liebert, I'm Thad Brown. Thanks very much for watching Bill's Camp Day Recap. We'll see you again later on in camp, but this time for Mortuary Park.